Testosterone. Testosterone binds directly to androgen receptors in muscle tissue, directly stimulating protein synthesis. It's the single most well-established anabolic hormone in the entire body of exercise research. It also activates satellite cells, the same ones responsible for the muscle memory phenomenon we've covered before. Studies manipulating testosterone directly show it can single-handedly determine whether someone builds muscle at all, even without training. This is why loss of testosterone, through age, illness, or suppression, correlates so strongly with muscle loss. Classic studies from the 1990s showed that men given testosterone injections gained significant muscle mass even without lifting a single weight. Combine testosterone with actual resistance training, and the muscle gains compound well beyond either factor alone. This is also the hormone most directly targeted by anabolic steroids, which is precisely why they work as well and as dangerously as they do. Interestingly, the muscle-building response to testosterone appears to be dose-dependent. Higher doses in research settings produced proportionally more growth, up to a point. This dose-response relationship is a big part of why testosterone replacement therapy, at properly monitored medical doses, has become so effective for men with genuine deficiencies. IGF-1. Insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1, might be an even more direct driver of muscle growth than testosterone itself. It activates the mTOR pathway, the central cellular switch that turns on muscle protein synthesis. Much of what people credit to growth hormone actually happens because growth hormone triggers the liver and muscle to produce IGF-1. Local IGF-1 production directly inside trained muscle appears to matter more for hypertrophy than circulating blood levels. Direct injections of IGF-1 into isolated muscle tissue in lab studies can trigger substantial growth on their own, without any other hormone present. Resistance training itself increases local IGF-1 production directly inside the muscle being worked, independent of what's happening in the bloodstream. Some researchers now believe a specific splice variant called mechanogrowth factor, produced locally in response to mechanical loading, may be even more important than standard circulating IGF-1. This is still an active area of ongoing research, not a settled conclusion, but it reinforces how much of muscle growth may happen locally rather than through blood-borne signals alone. Insulin. Insulin's real job for muscle isn't stimulating new growth directly. It's preventing breakdown and shuttling nutrients into cells. Without adequate insulin signaling, amino acids and glucose can't efficiently enter muscle cells to be used for repair. Its role is best described as permissive rather than a primary driver, necessary for the process, but not the trigger that starts it. This is why insulin resistance, from poor diet or inactivity, can blunt muscle-building results even when someone trains hard. This is also why post-workout meals containing both protein and carbohydrates tend to support recovery slightly better than protein alone. But this effect is modest, not the dramatic anabolic window many older bodybuilding myths describe. People with poorly managed type 2 diabetes often show measurably reduced muscle mass over time, a real-world illustration of what happens when this permissive role breaks down. Improving insulin sensitivity through regular exercise and diet quality is one of the more overlooked levers for supporting long-term muscle-building capacity. Growth hormone. Growth hormone gets marketed as a primary muscle-building hormone, and it's one of the most overhyped in this entire ranking. Most of its muscle-related effects appear to work indirectly by stimulating IGF-1 production rather than acting directly on muscle tissue. Studies giving healthy men growth hormone alone show increased size largely from fluid retention and connective tissue changes, not true muscle fiber growth. Combined with resistance training, direct evidence for growth hormone meaningfully adding extra hypertrophy beyond training and testosterone alone is surprisingly weak. Much of growth hormone's popularity comes from its black market use alongside steroids, not from standalone clinical evidence. It does have real, well-established benefits for recovery, joint health, and fat metabolism, just not as a primary driver of new muscle fiber growth. One randomized trial giving healthy older adults growth hormone found improvements in body composition markers, but strength gains lagged noticeably behind the visual changes. This mismatch between how someone looks and how strong they actually become is a recurring theme in growth hormone research specifically. Cortisol. Cortisol almost always gets cast as purely the enemy of muscle growth, and that's an oversimplification. A brief cortisol rise immediately after intense training is a normal, even necessary part of tissue remodeling and recovery signaling. The real problem is chronic, sustained elevation, which actually breaks down muscle tissue and blunts testosterone's signaling pathway. Timing and duration matter far more here than whether cortisol rises at all. Sleep deprivation, overtraining, and constant psychological stress are the most common everyday causes of the chronic elevation that actually causes harm. Managing those factors matters more for protecting muscle than trying to eliminate cortisol entirely, which isn't possible or even desirable. Some elite athletes and coaches now track morning cortisol levels as an early warning sign of overtraining before performance actually starts to decline. A rising baseline over several weeks is a far more useful signal than any single measurement taken on one particular day. Estrogen. Yes, in men too. Estrogen doesn't usually make anyone's list of muscle-building hormones, and that's a mistake, even in men. A portion of testosterone naturally converts into estrogen through an enzyme called aromatase, and that estrogen supports muscle repair and bone density. Men with artificially suppressed estrogen, in clinical studies, actually show impaired muscle and bone maintenance despite normal or high testosterone. The right amount, not zero, appears to matter, complicating the common assumption that lower estrogen is always better for building muscle. This is one reason aromatase-inhibiting supplements, sometimes marketed to bodybuilders as testosterone boosters, can backfire on bone and joint health over time. Estrogen receptors are present directly in human muscle tissue, which is part of why researchers now take this hormone seriously in men, not just women. Postmenopausal women, who experience a sharp drop in estrogen, also show accelerated muscle and bone loss, a parallel finding that reinforces this hormone's broader role. The overlap between male and female findings here is part of why researchers increasingly treat estrogen as a genuine musculoskeletal hormone, not just a reproductive one. Thyroid hormones. They regulate the metabolic rate that determines how efficiently your body can actually use the other anabolic signals available to it. An undiagnosed underactive thyroid can leave someone training hard, eating enough, with healthy testosterone, and still failing to build muscle efficiently. It ranks last here specifically because its role is permissive, a background requirement, not an active driver of growth itself. Both an underactive and an overactive thyroid can impair muscle function, just through different mechanisms, slow metabolism versus excessive muscle breakdown. A simple blood test can rule this out as a hidden factor if someone is training and eating correctly, but still not seeing expected results. Iodine and selenium deficiency are two of the more common, correctable dietary causes of an underactive thyroid worth ruling out first. For most people without a diagnosed condition, this hormone simply isn't the bottleneck. It only becomes relevant once something is actually wrong. So, the final ranking. Ranked by how directly and strongly the evidence supports each hormone actually causing muscle growth, testosterone and IGF, one sit clearly at the top. Insulin plays a crucial supporting role. Cortisol and estrogen are more nuanced than the internet gives them credit for. Growth hormone, despite its reputation, turns out to be one of the most overhyped names on this entire list. No single hormone works in isolation. They interact constantly, and disrupting any one of them can undercut the entire system. If you had to focus your attention on just two things from this entire list, protecting healthy testosterone levels and managing chronic stress would be the highest leverage places to start. Chasing growth hormone or aggressively suppressing estrogen, two of the more popular strategies in bodybuilding culture, turn out to be some of the least evidence-backed moves on this entire list. The boring fundamentals, sleep, training consistency, and adequate nutrition influence more of this hormonal picture at once than any single targeted intervention ever could.